Go Big Red. You finally did it. Nebraska finally achieved their first winning season since 2016. We have had two different presidents, and we have had several new national champions, new college football playoff participants since your last winning season. Many thought that Nebraska was cursed, but I think the greater reality was there were just a lot of mistakes in the attempted process by several athletic directors and administrators to bring Nebraska back for all the perfect pieces to weave together. And they didn't. But Nebraska did something this year under Matt Rule that under Frost and under Riley they couldn't do. And while they haven't reached Bo Pelini levels of success yet, you don't have Bo Pelini's own baggage, his own set of issues, and that's putting it pretty mildly. Nebraska right now is on the uptrend in recruiting. They are killing it in the transfer portal, as we have documented on this channel, and there are a lot of things that I like about Nebraska moving forward. There are also some areas where I have some concerns, and I think this game to a certain degree was the epitome of all these things, as Nebraska beats Boston College again. They finished the regular season 6-6. This bowl game win, while many might say it's meaningless, if you follow Nebraska at all, you don't have to be an insider, but if you have followed them and really ingrained yourself into their fandom, into their process, you know this meant a lot. Nebraska's 20-15 point win, will maybe uglier than Matt Rule and Dana Holgerson and John Butler would have wanted it to be. A win is a win, especially in this case because it's the final game of the 2024 Nebraska football season. So I'm going to break this game down. I know it's not the same as a regular season game, but there are some important takeaways. There's a little bit of looking ahead that I want to do. So before we do this, and so that you can get notified when I release new Nebraska football content, new Big Ten college football content, I want you to hit the subscribe button, like the video, comment your thoughts down below, share this video and channel around to others who love the sport of college football, who are Nebraska football fans. I am a college football analyst. I cover the sport of college football, but I will say that I like Nebraska as a program. And it's good for college football when Nebraska is successful. So take away from that what you will. But again, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, comment your thoughts on this game down in the comment section below. Tell me, on a scale of 1 to 10, how confident are you that Matt Rule can bring Nebraska back? Not back in the sense of winning national titles. Nebraska's a bit away from there, a long way from there. But in terms of contending for the college football playoff, contending for the Big Ten, contending for conference championships, which Bo Pelini did, reached the Big 12 championship game twice and the Big Ten championship game once. Let me know what you think about all those things in the comment section below. Join our Discord server where we need college football fans and Nebraska fans via the link in the description or down below in the pinned comment. And if you want to support what I do here on College Football with Sam monetarily, you can donate in the comments section via Super Chat, or you can purchase merchandise via my merchandise store via the link in the description or down below in the pinned comment. You can also sign up as a member of the Patreon page. But unlike regular season games, there isn't so much that we can take away, or as much. There isn't so much relative to, well, how's the team going to do in their next game? Are they on track to reaching their season goals? At this point, it's the end of the season. And Nebraska had some opt-outs, though not many. Nash Hutmacher, Ty Robinson, those are players who their tapes are already set. Their NFL futures, whether they're going to get drafted high or drafted low, are going to get set. So they didn't have to play, but they did. Jamal Banks didn't have to play, but he did. And I think that, Ramir Johnson playing in this game and having a big game, scoring some touchdowns for Nebraska, a little bit of a homecoming for him. A lot of these players have put in so much work for Nebraska, whether it was under Frost, whether it was under Rule, to bring the Cornhuskers back to at least local prominence, because there's nothing else to do but football guys, in Nebraska, in Lincoln, Nebraska. And yet, at times, they have been dominated by outsiders and in-state recruiting. They have not had a winning season, even a season of bowl eligibility since, again, 2016. It's been rough if you haven't paid attention. I imagine all of you watching this have paid attention. It's kind of hard not to with how Nebraska has been talked about in the national media. This was a huge win for the Cornhuskers, symbolically, I think. I don't believe in curses. I don't believe in luck here. Of course, there are things that happen in life to me or to you or to others that are fortunate or unfortunate, or hypothetically speaking, maybe if some, like one little thing or big thing happens to be different, the ball bounces the other way, of course. But at the end of the day, you have to do everything in your power to change your circumstances, regardless of the outside noise, because control the controllables. It's what many have said, many successful coaches or people, whether they've risen from the bottom to the top, have said, control the controllables. Focus on what you can control. And I think for Nebraska, that's what they needed. And I think that they are doing a much better job at that than they were under Frost or Riley. I mean, remember, Scott Frost, I think many Nebraska fans know the rumors and what people have said. He was a pretty lazy coach in my mind, a recruiter that was very hit and miss, didn't prioritize what he needed to prioritize for Nebraska to succeed in the Big Ten, like recruiting a lot of good weapons, but not utilizing them properly, and also really ignoring deficits on the offensive line in the trenches. And he brought over all of his buddies from UCF to coach with him at Nebraska, some of whom he's bringing back to coach with him at UCF, which I think is a sign of how good of a coach he was all along. So my point there being that this was good. This win was, from that standpoint, that symbolically Nebraska has broken through what was previously thought to be a titanium ceiling. It was revealed, as most believed and thought to be, a glass ceiling that Nebraska just failed to break for so long. But Matt Rule and Ramir Johnson and Nash Hutmacher, Dylan Raiola, who had a QBR of 77.7, one of his better days of the year, 228 passing yards, a touchdown, a pick, 7.4 yards per pass attempt. They took a hammer and they smashed through that glass ceiling, and all those shards came tumbling down, made a little bit of an ugly scene as the 20-15 win was, but it was good, honestly. So that's kind of the big picture here. Big picture as in not necessarily long term, but what this win meant outside of the football. Now, getting to the football and also talking about the future, and then we'll close out here. Nebraska has a little bit of a dilemma moving forward, in my mind. And what that dilemma is you have Dylan Raiola, you hired Dana Holgerson, which I thought was an A-plus hire, like chef's kiss, perfect hire, I think, for what Nebraska wants to do. You're recruiting well in the trenches. You are using the portal to bring in good wide receivers. You've recruited well at tight end and wide receiver. You're doing better in the trenches. However, as we have seen this season, and I know that Tony White, I don't believe, was the glue that held this team together. I think Nebraska was more than just one coordinator or a few players this year. I think the bowl game showed that. And their issues weren't just because of one player or one coach. There were multiple facets that caused the issues that Nebraska had this year. But with all the losses on the defensive line, like Nebraska in this game owned Boston College at the lines of scrimmage. The final 4th and 1 play, running it up the middle to seal out the game, that was physicality. I mean, they shoved over Boston College's defensive line. And on the other side of things, BC only averaged 1.8 yards per carry. Nebraska had 3 sacks, but more importantly, 7 TFLs, and Grayson James had a long run of 14. 47 rushing yards, 2 rushing touchdowns. They were short, though. All came in the fourth quarter. The defense did a lot of bend but don't break in this game. Boston College was 0 of 4 on fourth down. They had several drives in the red zone, came away with missed field goals or failed fourth down conversion attempts. Just with all the losses on defense, hiring John Butler from within, I wonder that I wonder if Nebraska, the dilemma that Nebraska faces is, do you want to ride the hot hand with Raiola, with Holgerson? Does Rule want to trust his process and his guys? Those are kind of all interwoven. Is Nebraska comfortable with their current trajectory, or do they think they have to push themselves more, or should they push themselves more if they want to sustainably be at more of a top 1/3 Big Ten program level, not just middle third or teetering on middle third? What Nebraska was this year. I mean, guys, remember, Nebraska was 3-6 in Big Ten conference play. Only Northwestern, Maryland, and Purdue, only 3 schools finished with definitively worse records than Nebraska. Nebraska was tied with UCLA, Michigan State, and Wisconsin with a 3-6 conference record, lost to UCLA, beat Wisconsin, and they finished behind the following programs. Obviously, Oregon, Penn State, Indiana, Ohio State, Illinois, winnable game, but Illinois did a better job of winning the games that it should have won than Nebraska did, and they beat Nebraska head-to-head. Iowa, 6-3 record, same type of deal. Michigan, 5-4. Minnesota, 5-4. USC, 4-5. They just won. They won their game, the Las Vegas Bowl against Texas A&M, which was a pretty phenomenal game. Rutgers, 4-5, a team that Nebraska beat. Washington, 4-5. I mean, by my preseason expectations, by Connor's on Corn Crazed preseason's expectations, I don't know exactly what John Johnston had in mind, but by what a lot of Nebraska people said, and even what Rule himself said, the season was kind of a failure, if we're being honest. It was just really hitting the bare minimum, at least can you go bowling, where you failed to do so in 2023. And they did. But this is going to be the last season where 6-6 is going to be tolerated. They go 6-6 next year. Rule's on the hot seat entering 2026. And the special teams almost let Boston College back in the game. Nebraska had a brutal blocked punt where Buschini's protection team just frankly didn't protect him. Boston College got through and just thwacked that thing in the air, got it all the way down to the 1. It was just, I really don't know what to say. And then also fake punt, thought that was a really good play. The fake field goal on the same drive following the fake punt, that was not an intelligent play whatsoever in my mind. And I think that moving forward, you got to look at Ed Foley, who wasn't fired, or there was no news surrounding him after the regular season, which was typically, or is typically, the time to make change. And there were no changes made there. John Hull didn't even get a chance in this game to make a field goal. 2 of 3 on extra points. One was blocked, returned for 2. That was Boston College's only score in the first 3 quarters of the game. And that's kind of where I'm going with all of this. And I'm not going to spend too much more time on it because, again, it's just the Bad Boy Mowers Pinstripe Bowl. And both rosters, especially Boston College's, were gutted. Both of these teams, in terms of statistics, were pretty equal. But at the end of the day, Nebraska was just talented enough, or maybe just that much more fundamentally sound with some things, to where they eked it out. 363 total yards to BC's 348. Nebraska had 2 turnovers, Boston College had 1. But again, Nebraska on fourth downs was 3 of 4. BC was 0 of 4. So that's that right there. I mean, that really determined the game. If you want a stat that, if I told you before the game, would determine what you thought the outcome was going to be, it's just Boston College 0 of 4 on fourth down, Nebraska 3 of 4. I mean, that gives you closer to a 100% chance than I'd say even a 90% chance that the team with 75% conversion percentage on fourth down is going to beat the team who went for it on 4 attempts and failed on all of them. And yet it was only a 5-point win. and yet the TOP was close. Nebraska had 21 first downs to Boston College's 20. BC was 6 of 12 on third downs. Nebraska was 3 of 11. So part of it was just the fact that Nebraska was able to just have more oomph in their step. They were able to move the ball forward more, and they were a more balanced team. Emmett Johnson and Ramir Johnson both had at or over 60 yards rushing, to be exact. They were the more balanced team, the better team. I really don't like the special teams situation for the Cornhuskers. I don't. If Ed Foley is going to stay there, I don't one bit, because time and time again, whether it's blocked PATs, whether it's blocked field goals, whether it is missed field goals, not figuring out the kicking situation until middle of the year when some of the air has been taken out of the balloon, when the helium is escaping through the cuts, and just the blocked punts. It's unacceptable. It's really unacceptable. And something that I've noticed time and time again is that a lot of these recent national champions, a lot of them have began to prioritize special teams play. Didn't always used to be the case. I mean, remember, Nick Saban was notorious in the 2010s for being elite at everything, and the special teams units were kind of undesirable and very disappointing. But even toward the end of his tenure, he got Will Reichard, who was one of the best kickers in the nation, and James Burnip it was a very good punter for them, and it was still at Alabama, or is still at Alabama, for this season, I do believe. Michigan in 2023, really good special teams outside of the punt return game, where they had a habit of really muffing their punts. And then you look at Georgia in 21 and 22 and the previous few seasons under Kirby Smart. They've had good kickers, they've had good punters, and they have played a critical role in their success when they need them. Special teams cost Nebraska, along with Raiola's inexperience, which is something that I'm more confident in being fixed than the special team situation, in games against Illinois, nearly cost him against Rutgers, didn't cost him at all against Ohio State, but then again, circle back right there to the defense allowing several wide open deep shots from Will Howard to his receivers, and then, of course, Raiola's inexperience. Special teams did not help against Iowa, where Iowa got that really short field, which gave him 3, which was enough to circle forward or fast forward to the end of the game. They kick a game-winning field goal to win it, not to tie it. And I could go on and on and on. Special teams cost Nebraska so many opportunities this year. And it will again next year if these things are not fixed, because looking at the situation with Nebraska, again, I think there is a little bit of a dilemma here. There's a bit of a fork in the road. Is Matt Rule doing enough? Does he know that he's doing enough to bring Nebraska into that upper one-third fold of the Big Ten? Because if you're there, you're going to be competing for college football playoff spots on almost an annual basis, whether you get there or not. Just be competing and make him every so often, especially for where Nebraska has been in recent memory. Can he occasionally compete for the Big Ten? If you're in that upper one-third fold, absolutely. You can compete for reaching Indy, depending on your schedule, depending on your seniority, your roster talent, and these other things, and also how you can win close games. And special teams, look at Ohio State, Michigan. Ohio State is a kicker. They win that game. If you switched Michigan and Ohio State's kickers, Ohio State wins that game. And even if Michigan holds Ohio State's offense kind of down in the mud, they still don't have a chance. Nebraska next season, if the punting game or kicking game or return game, protection game, blocking, if all those things in special teams are perfect for much of next season, they can win 9, 10, dare I say even 11 games, depending on how the other teams on their schedule shake out. If they have a lot of issues there in many games, they could go 6-6 again. They could go 7-5. And I think that your target next year is 8, 9 wins. And special teams can play a massive role there. And special teams is something small. It's something that it's not easy to be elite at anything, but special teams often is a conscious choice of investment as to whether you are at least competent at it or not. And much like Ohio State under Ryan Day, or some of these other teams, it feels like Nebraska is not that invested in special teams. And that's a concern because Raiola progressing into being a much better quarterback next year, as much as I would like to think it's a guarantee, and I think it's very likely, it's not a guarantee. The defense reloading, I think we all understand based off of the struggles from this year's defense, very far from a guarantee. It's actually likely that they will regress with all that they're losing next year. Special teams is something that, again, is more of a conscious decision-making process rather than the more complex, grinded out process of building a great offense and building a great defense. Again, not saying it's easy to be a leader, great at special teams, but I think it's easier and is more of an effort requirement rather than a talent or depth or money requirement compared to, the offense and defensive units that obviously make up the bulk of the game. But if Nebraska can go from being an absolute loser in close games to being the master of close games under Matt Rule, that will do a lot for the program. And I think maybe that will do more for the program than, I don't even know if I should be saying this, but that might do more for the program long term than one player in Dylan Raiola or the defense just individually next season, making sure they get a ton of star talent from the portal. Think long term in my mind. And that's where I think the dilemma is. And I think this game was the epitome of that in a way, because the offense, there were some inconsistencies. There were some bad throws from Raiola. There were some good throws from Raiola. I liked the trench play all around. In the secondary, we saw what we have witnessed all season long. We observed it. Wide open guys or DBs who are just a little bit of a step behind or not playing at the same level as the opposing wide receivers, and therefore they're giving up yards, and the D-line and the defensive front, and like John Bullock, for example, or Nash Hutmacher or Ty Robinson have to make up for all of that. And the special teams unit is what it has been all season long. Bad. So I think that's where the dilemma is, the fork in the road. And I don't exactly know what the answer is to that. I think obviously prioritizing special teams it should be for Nebraska an utmost importance, and I do think there need to be further coaching upgrades and maybe roster upgrades. But also there's the reality that they've been recruiting well. I think Dana Holgerson was a really good hire, and I think regardless, this was a good win to give some momentum entering the preseason of 2025, and I think that next year Nebraska will have its best team in a while, and certainly its best team under Matt Rule in 2025. So thank you all so much for watching. Remember to like, remember to subscribe, remember to hit the notification bell, and also comment your thoughts down below. I will see you all very soon. Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, and go Big Red.